Hello you, it's me. Today we're going to talk about Sinopticon, which is a collection of Chinese science fiction short stories, some of which are lesser known authors and some of which are by prize winners. All of them, however, are translated here into English for the first time by Xueti and Christine Ni, which is something I'm very excited for. Short story collections, hard to review. There won't be much marked on the time bar. I'm probably going to discuss it all in one big lump, where I talk about thoughts I had, some of the stories that really jumped out at me that I'm probably not going to forget for a long time. I think one of the best things about this collection that I don't usually like in other collections were the footnotes and the notes by the editor translator at the end of each story. They gave some information about the authors who are pretty unknown outside of China, so it's giving them exposure outside of there for the first time, as well as cultural context. There's a lot of references in these stories to icons from Chinese history, Chinese folklore, and the notes highlight the importance and the relevance of these things. I think the translator did a really good job as well of preserving unique author voices and managing to make them all feel different. It would be very easy, I think, for a translator to recreate a collection of stories in their own style, and I think that this has been avoided here really well. There were two really standout stories for me in this collection. The first one was Tombs of the Universe, in which, as humans expand into the universe, guilds are created to continue and develop the tradition of grave and burial rituals. This one is told in the far future from the point of view of somebody who studies the tradition of reverence for death. It explores how our view of death would change as we expand into the universe and we are no longer the master of our environment. We're at the whims of the dangers of deep space and strange planets, and death becomes a much more close friend. The second one I really loved was The Great Migration. This one is about workers from all over Mars returning to Earth every 2 years, packed shoulder to shoulder, like sardined into spaceships, scrabbling for tickets, sleeping in storage lockers, stowing away on ships in a desperate attempt to get home. The translator in the notes for this one talks about how the author was inspired to write this by the Spring Festival and New Year. International migrations happen all across Earth, with people from around the world returning to China to see family and friends. Really loved that one. Some of the stories were weird, though. There was one where, and I haven't seen this anywhere at all before, the author of the story kept interjecting their own story with comments about their writing and where the plot was going, with notes in between a couple of paragraphs like, I'm not sure where this was going at this point, not sure what I was going to do with it. I've never seen that before. There's also a zombie story, which was very interesting in that it was told from the point of view of a zombie during the apocalypse. It's divisive, and it seems from the other reviews I've read that people who liked the rest of the collection were a bit meh about that one. I wasn't meh about that one, but it was very light-hearted in comparison to the rest of the collection, and it was the one that I wasn't sure fit as well as the others. The stories in here feel like hard sci-fi as opposed to soft sci-fi, but unlike a lot of old hard sci-fi that's based around a concept, all of these feel like they're based around people, which a lot of short stories are, because they have to be windows into a world that you instantly sympathize with somebody and connect in a very short space of time. They're focused on how society and attitude towards technology changes, alongside the introduction of new concepts, and exploring these changes from interesting and novel points of view. Most of the stories have quite sad or bittersweet endings. I think, though, that it's realism and it shows understanding of what humans are like. Maybe that's reflective of specifically Chinese attitude or formulas of Chinese storytelling that as a Westerner I don't immediately recognize. For me, the fact that there aren't neat, wrapped up, happy endings lends to the immersion and the believability of the stories themselves. There was one theme that really stood out to me, though, in every story, and I do wonder why it was so pervasive and where it comes from culturally, and that was the theme of accepting the inevitable and things that you don't have the power to change. And it made a lot of the stories have this sense of catharsis in a way. I think this collection could also be about how tradition and culture will evolve, and it's kind of an exploration of ritualism in humanity's future and what we will carry with us from the past that defines us as a people. In a lot of Chinese fairy tales, of which I've only read some, the sun, the moon, the stars feature heavily, and I'd love to read more Chinese sci-fi and learn about how and where and when the transition from religion to myth to sci-fi and fantasy and genre fiction took place. It's hard to gauge how representative this is of the author base in China. These are all quite modern, they're all post 1990, I think. But getting this translated is so important because it gives us an interior view of a culture that's not ours. And it hammers in, regardless where you go in the world, people are pretty much the same. And the things you see happen are familiar. I think sci-fi is very reflective of the conditions that the people who write it are under, of the society they live in. And I think you can learn a lot about the author from what they write in their science fiction. The only other Chinese sci-fi I've read before was a collection translated by Ken Liu. And I just hope that slowly now that there is a door opening and we're going to see a whole flood of translated material. And I'm very excited for that. Highly recommend this one. Really loved it. Really good short story collection. Well anthologized. So thank you for tuning in for that review. Don't forget to follow me on Goodreads and Twitter, which I'll link down below. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram as well. That's down below as well. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And I'll also link the Interstellar Book Club where we read sci-fi. If you want to join us there, we're happy to have you. And I'll see you soon for the next review. Bye.